There are moments when you know you have to do things differently, even when you're a 140-year-old newspaper. The mission behind Northwest Passages has always been to get Spokane talking about ourselves, our ideas, and our community's future. Spokane is a great book town. The idea was, how do you use books as a jumping off point to talk about much bigger things? What if we get a whole bunch of people in a room who wouldn't normally be in a room together and have them talk about our community when they might not even realize that they're talking about our community? Our first Northwest Passages event nearly 6 years ago set the tone perfectly. It was for a book about the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone, and let's just say it was a crowd that wouldn't normally hang out together. The response was better than we ever could have imagined. They asked questions, they looked each other in the eyes, and they realized they had way more in common than they had different. It's exactly what we were trying to do. We saw people talk about things they would never talk about, which has been the point all along. It was also about showing the value of local journalism again, how our reporters serve this community, reminding people why they love their newspaper for generations. Northwest Passages has become one of the most popular event series in the Pacific Northwest and one of the largest newspaper-driven book clubs in the nation. More than 30% of our newsroom's payroll is covered by the Community Journalism Fund. It's funded local journalists and journalism projects that simply wouldn't and couldn't happen without strong financial support from our region. Newspapers are the lifeblood of local journalism. Newspapers typically employ more journalists than the rest of the local media market combined. Preserving those local journalists is an essential part of keeping democracy healthy in our country. Our speakers are interviewed live on stage by reporters, editors, or columnists from the Spokesman-Review, giving a first-hand perspective of how our journalists conduct the interviews that bring them the news 365 days a year. It's true newspapers act as a fourth estate, but they also educate, unite, and inspire communities by holding up a mirror, letting a community truly see itself. That's exactly why these events and the Community Journalism Fund have become such an essential part of how journalism will not only survive, but also thrive in Eastern Washington and North Idaho. What if we could use books to talk about school safety, or environmental issues, or the return of hate, or complicated racial issues, or Native issues, or the importance of free speech, or healthcare, or even modern family life? What's it like to bring in one of the world's most famous authors to talk about education as empowerment? Or bring in a famous television travel guide so that we can better understand international politics? Or maybe it's just a great cowboy story that reminds us just how fun it is to let words take us someplace we never imagined. You never leave a Northwest Passages event feeling sad or beaten down. You feel inspired. You leave knowing you can still make a difference. You're also helping us redefine what local journalism looks like. This is journalism that's all about a community having a discussion with itself. And we can't wait to hear what you're going to have to say tonight. Welcome to Northwest Passages. Well, I'm back here tonight because it's a fire hazard if I keep walking around like this. So I'm not going to trip on all you, but I'm Rob Curley. I'm the editor of the Spokesman-Review. We are here tonight because Spokane has the most badass local authors on the planet. So we just kind of go crazy. And if you've noticed, we run lots of ads and lots of stories because subtlety is for wimps. So, look, I've missed you all so much. As I was walking around today, I got to talk to everybody, and it was like, man, the posse's all here. It was snowing, and we didn't care. It was just so much fun. I was like, wow, we should go gamble or something. So you all know me. There's a lot to catch up on, and I'm gonna, and I love Mountain Dew, so I'm gonna talk fast. I've had about a case. So good, it's delicious. So when we started Northwest Passage, it was to help us put together a way to pay for reporters that the newspaper couldn't do anymore. So we now, as you saw, 30% of our newsroom is now covered by what you're a part of now. One of them is Orion Donovan Smith, who is the only DC reporter from the state of Washington. So not even the Seattle Times has one. There's only 2 newspapers on the West Coast that have a DC reporter, us and the LA Times. So how lucky are they? And I just have this feeling we're going to need this sucker over the next 4 years. So Amanda Saunders, one of our health reporters. These are all reporters paid for by the Community Journalism Fund. James Hanlon, he has broken more stories in the last 3 years than anyone I can get. You remember all the crazy stuff with the West Bonner School District? That's one of like 40 things he's broken. He's just great. Alina Perry is our education reporter. She's back here in the back. You should, yeah, right back here. Very embarrassed. Very embarrassed. Mitchell Rowland is our new State House reporter. Pretend you see a very famous, handsome guy. No, he's not here. But he is very handsome. Monica Carrillo-Casas is our rural education and government issues reporter and our first Murrow Fellow, paid for by Washington State. So anyway, we have 4 journalists who have been going in and out of covering the State House this year, including Alina back here in the back. Thank you. So, because we got to cover those turkeys a lot this year, too. So, if you don't know, we're the only newspaper in America that does a paid high school journalism internship. This was our group last year. It was 10 kids. This was the first time we had to go from man-to-man to zone defense, and we will not be doing 10 students again next year. It was so tiring, just so much. But I love them. In the last year, coming up here, we are about to celebrate 1 year of the Black Lens returning. It's been great. So since the very first time we did this, it was about how do we find a way for us to support journalism. And all the journalists that I showed you, by the way, they don't carry a copyright for the Spokesman-Review. They carry a Creative Commons license, which means the community owns it, not a corporation. First newspaper in America to do it. So that all of the journalism that you help fund, you own. So this was the goal. So I'm not saying that, April 15th is tax day. This is going to be the first year that tax day doesn't suck, because we're going to announce something very big. And I'm not saying it's called Community Journalism Lab, but let's just say something very large is likely going to be announced on that day that's named after punctuation. So thank you all for coming. It's so fun to hang out with you. If we behave tonight, I can give an abbreviated tour, but I'm told it has to end by 9 because that's when the snow's really supposed to come in. So we'll just do the highlights. We'll just do like a couple of places we're not supposed to go, and then we'll call it good. So let's talk about tonight. So I love it when we do an event with a local author, and then it gets even bigger. Like it gets maybe optioned for like a movie, or ends up in People magazine. I just love that shit. So we have Leyna tonight. Lena's going to be here. She's great, and she's going to be talking with Alex Duggan. She is one of our public safety reporters, and I love when people like Alex will just go knock on the door of felons and say, "Are you here?" It's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the book here.
Spokane is home to a vibrant writing community, and Leyna Krow basks humbly in its midst. A contributor to the Spokesman-Review summer stories, her work has been referred to as genre-bending, fabulist, Western, or fiction science. Whatever you want to call it, there's no doubting the woman writes compelling stories with elements of magical realism and historical fiction. Her 2017 collection of short stories, I'm Fine, But You Appear to Be Sinking, was a Believer Book Award finalist. The mystery of how the Great Fire of Spokane started was the central event of her debut novel, Fire Season. Now, Spokane serves again as the backdrop for her collection, Sinkhole and Other Inexplicable Voids. To join her in conversation tonight, Spokesman-Review reporter Alexandra Duggan. Please welcome them both to the Northwest Passages stage.
Testing. Okay, we need to change my photo for that. Because what's going on? All right, so everyone, welcome our literal favorite author. I read the book. It's great. Everyone clap. Okay, so I told her I was going to interrogate her because that's what I do.
Oh my God, that's so many questions.
Hey, okay, this is background. I just want you to know. All right. So I know that you live in Spokane with your family, and I just want to know because Spokane's brought up a lot in these books, and I love it. But I would love for you to talk about your time in Spokane. And before we do that, really quick, raise your hand in the audience if you have ever been affected by a wildfire or know someone who has been affected by a wildfire. Okay, that's quite a few. Honestly, probably everyone. And you do a great job of conveying people affected by those disasters. And I really just appreciate that. But I just want you to talk a little bit about your time here and what it's taught you about fire and natural disasters.
So I'm not from here. Apologies. I know the crowd I'm with. I'm from California originally. Apologies. But I've been in Spokane. Boo.
Get out of here! I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
No, we love you. It's okay. We accept you.
I've been here now for 15 years. I moved, I'm from California. I had moved to Seattle. I was working in journalism and was deeply unhappy. I was bad at it. And
there's no way that you were bad at it, girl. Come on.
Oh, man. You know what's so much easier than journalism, though? Making stuff up.
Or just crying. Like, I don't know. Either one. Crying,
Both.
making stuff
Yes.
up.
I was crying, and then I started making stuff up, and that was easier. I was bad at it, and I wanted to do something different. And it was actually my mom who encouraged me to go back to graduate school. I, had expressed an interest, like, to write fiction seriously, and she said, you can go to school for that. You can get, if you want to go get a master's degree in that, go do it. And it was sort of this push that I needed. And so I applied to EWU to the MFA program here, and I was accepted. And I moved over here with the intention of going to school and then promptly leaving. But I got here and I liked it. It was a nice place, and I met the man who I ultimately married, and then I stayed. And so I've been here for 15 years, and I now teach in the MFA program at EWU where I was a student, and I have two little kids who are Spokaneites. They were both born at Sacred Heart, and my parents have since moved here from California. And so I'm very much now, I feel like, entrenched in this community. But yeah, Spokane has changed in the 15 years that I've been here in a lot of ways. And one of them is our relationship to climate and the natural environment. Wildfire smoke is not something that I experienced in my first years here. But the summer that my husband and I got married, 2015, we narrowly missed not being able to have our wedding outside because of wildfire smoke. It had rained 2 days before, and it cleared the air, and that was the first summer that I had experienced that. And I know that smoke comes into the city from wildfires. It had happened before. I just hadn't been here before it. I even write about it in Fire Season, which takes place in 1889, and that's historically accurate, that the city was, even after the fire that decimated the city, there were wildfires where the smoke settled in the city. But, it happens more and more often, and folks living on the periphery of Spokane are, their homes are threatened. Folks have lost tremendous amounts of property in recent years, and so it is a thing that's encroaching on us, and it feels like quickly. That was not hopeful. I'm sorry.
That was great.
But here we are.
You're doing great. We're winging this together, y'all. Okay. No, and to be honest, I moved here a year and a half ago from Boise, Idaho. We are in a valley, so we get smoke, but we don't, it's desert. There's not a lot of trees around in the mountains. There's hills, but I didn't experience the climate, I don't want to say maybe anxiety is the right word, but I was not, when I was a reporter in Boise, I was not going out on wildfires. I wasn't doing that. And here, they're where credit is due to everyone at the Spokesman. They're like, where is your wildfire gear? You need to have that on you, and you need to have your hat. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, you're right. But then we go out there, and it's scary. Like, it's, people are losing their homes. There's people running, trying to, this lady I talked to last year trying to save her chickens, and the firefighters saved her chickens, by the way. But there are a lot of people here affected by that, and I feel like you did a really great job kind of conveying that, but also just in Sinkhole in Western Washington, that's where the book takes place, and we're going to talk a little bit about Mount Rainier. Alina's favorite mountain, where is she? Alina Perry, yeah, your favorite mountain. So the book, what was your intended purpose behind following a family through the changing climate? Because this book, I cried at the end. I'm going to be so real with you. Because I was like, I need so many answers. Like, what's going on? I need her to tell me everything. But what was the purpose behind you thinking, like, I need to follow this family through generations, and I'm going to be a little weird with it. I'm going to add a little bit of, fairy tale fiction magic in there. Like, what was the purpose behind that?
Yeah. So I always feel like adding magic to stories makes them more accessible, if that makes sense. Fiction science is a term that you guys used in the video, and I was so glad for that. And that was lovingly given to me by the author Sharma Shields, who, if you guys are regulars at Northwest Passage, you have heard her. And it's something that I use a lot, is sort of this technique of things that sound like they're scientific but are very, very made up. And then also just the pure use of magical realism. And it's because I feel like it makes difficult things more accessible to talk about. Like you said, there's a lot about climate in this book, but I'm not a climate scientist. I'm a fiction writer who was bad at journalism. Like, I have no leg to stand on. And I certainly did research, but if I can make things up and if I can imbue them with magic, you can say, oh, okay, we're in a world that's not quite our own. I don't need to take this literally, but the outcome for the characters is still the same. What's happening in the story, the emotions, the impact on the characters is, can be believable with you in a place where you're like, I can suspend disbelief, and you can suspend disbelief about all sorts of things.
Yeah, and I feel like I was feeling, does anyone know, really quick, because I have ADHD, I get off track, does anyone know, like, the feeling of when you walk out of a movie theater and it's, like, dark and you're like, I feel like I'm in a different world? When I finished your book, that's exactly how I felt. I was like, I feel like I walked out of a movie theater. I feel like I don't know what's going on. Like, I needed more answers. And I feel like, the magic that you put into the book, I feel like I was feeling their feelings. I feel that's when you say you were bad at journalism. I don't know if I believe you, but the opening though describes a family. The first page, I remember looking up from my couch and I was like, I need to ask her about this. I don't know what's going on. It describes a family going into their nursery with their other kid, and they find not one baby but two babies. So for most people, if you found a random baby in your crib, you would call the police, maybe, wouldn't you? So I feel like I would have called the police. I wrote down, this rattled me enough to keep reading, because it did. And it seems like everyone was just okay with that baby. It seems like no one cared about calling the police. Seems like everyone was like, yeah, this seems normal and is fine. And I'm sitting here like, where is the police, dude? But can you tell us the mindset of these characters? Like, first of all, why didn't they call the police? Because I'm wondering, as a public safety reporter, I am always calling the police. But I feel like everyone in these stories seems to just shrug at things. And I'm sitting here like, can anyone make a phone call? Like, where are these people? What is going on? So I would love to know, like, where was that? I mean, what was the mindset you were writing it in? And, like, what are these characters thinking? Like, hey, this random baby named Nicholas appeared in my crib, and I have no idea where he came from.
I like the impulse that, like, if you're like, baby, you shouldn't be their police.
Okay,
come arrest the baby. So yes, in the first story, the Fensters, who we see in there are 6 stories that relate to them in the book. Their son Jace, who's not quite a year old, all of a sudden there's a second one of him.
Police.
Yeah, and they actually have a discussion. They're like, what should we do? Should we call the police? And they decide that they should not. They should involve nobody. What they do is they raise the second child as their own because they feel clearly that he is theirs because essentially he's the same as their existing baby. So they can't, because they can't figure out what's gone wrong, they assume nothing has gone wrong and they just raise him as their own. And he is, by the second time you see them, he's just a normal part of their family. And yeah, I don't like stories that explain a whole lot of stuff. I just want to get to the fun part,
Girl, I'm a journalist. I need explanation. I need sources. I need a thesis. Like, explain that thought process. Like, I just wanted to keep it a secret. I just thought it was fun, or what? Because oh my god, I have so many questions.
Yeah. So like, if you think about traditional science fiction or fantasy, there is a lot of explanation of the weird, right? We build the whole world, and how did we get here, and how does this work? Magical realism can be anything from, we have that big explanation to, no, a thing has happened and we will move on and I will say nothing. And I like that version. And some people do find that deeply unsatisfying.
You have literally caused me pain. Thank you. I'm kidding.
Yeah. But you will have to live with it because the fact of the matter is, I don't know where Nicholas came from. And I spent hundreds of pages writing about these people. And at no point did I, for myself, answer the question, oh, here's why this other baby appeared. Which would bring, if I think back to my time in graduate school, my wonderful thesis advisor, Greg Spatz, would fall over if he knew that I didn't know the answer. That was always the thing that he would say when I would write strange stories. He would say, you don't have to put it on the page, but you have to know for yourself, because how are you going to write around it in a way that makes sense for readers if you don't know for yourself? And my answer is, sometimes you don't have to know for yourself. But you're saying otherwise, and I appreciate that. You're on Team Greg.
I'm in interrogation mode. I need to know. And I told her before this, I said, I'm going to grill you because I have so many questions still. And she just laughs, and I was like, I know you're not going to tell me. I know you're not going to give me them. Okay. Well, let's move into kind of the theme of the book, which is climate and natural disasters. So I want to talk about, there's a part in the book where a professor tells his girlfriend's daughter that he's a science professor, and he's kind of studying these caterpillars and butterflies that are appearing everywhere, and everyone's like, oh, these are gross, but what do we do about them? And he's like, well, why is no one listening to me? Like, I'm trying to tell people about these bugs and nobody is hearing me. And his girlfriend's daughter says, well, maybe it's because they just don't care. And honestly, ironically, there's a lot of things happening around us. There's the LA wildfires. Remember how devastating those were. And I know that people cared about that. I know they did. But I feel like sometimes when we have disasters or issues or anything under the sun, you name it, there are people that shrug. There are people that don't care. And I feel like sometimes I scream from the rooftops and I'm like, please listen to me. And no one does. But it feels like a lot of the times nowadays, we can take a megaphone and go up on the roof and scream these types of things. Please listen to me, please, please. And no one wants to hear it. And I don't know, I feel like, is there purpose in your book trying to weave that into our ever-present changing times? Because I feel like that's gotten a lot more prevalent, is the begging, pleading, please listen to me, and nobody does.
There are a few stories in this collection, and that's the first one where somebody wants to be heard and nobody is listening. And I do think it's a thing that I do feel aware of. I'm not a person who is shouting from the rooftops, but there are a lot of people who are and who I think attention is warranted, but get looked around for far, far too long. And so, yeah, there are, he's sort of the first one, and he's a little bit of a comical character until he's not. And then things get more and more serious as the book goes on in terms of who's not being listened to.
I feel like the lesson in that, the less serious lesson in that is like always listen to the weird guy with glasses because he will tell you the truth. But you know, I just feel like a lot of people shrug at these types. You're laughing. It's funny. A lot of people shrug at people, you know. And honestly, journalists, I feel like we scream from the rooftops a lot, not intentionally, but you know, we write a paper, so it's the same thing. But we say like, this is happening, and it seems like everyone doesn't care. And I don't know if you've seen that a lot in just, you know, your life or recently or what. But I mean, like, do you think this book was kind of a calling? Like, please listen.
I don't know if I intended it that way, but we can say yes because that sounds noble.
Okay, great. Yeah, because it was for me.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I do feel like I definitely felt that when I was working as a journalist. I was working for small community papers, and one of them that I worked for a while was free, and from time to time people would call and request that we stop their subscription. And I was like, it's a free newspaper, like you can't get the free news, and that seemed rough.
Get it as far away from me as possible.
And the one larger daily paper that I did work for was the South King County Journal outside of Seattle, which closed 3 months after I started working there. And so, you know, I did have this feeling of like, who's gonna say the things if nobody wants the news? And so, you know, I appreciate that you feel that way, but also like I'm glad that you're here doing the news, you know.
Well, I appreciate that you wrote this whole book that made me spiral. I'm kidding.
You're welcome, and I'm sorry.
No. I really loved it. I honestly, everyone should read this. I feel it made me feel like so. Well, we'll get into that. Okay, so, so I feel like the book resonated with me in a really weird way because for those of you who haven't read it, there's a huge part in there about Mount Rainier and how it's getting hot outside. And everyone's like, man, you can see it. They're like, this glacier is melting, oh my God. And this one girl, like we talked about, shouting from the rooftop, she works at the ranger station. She's like, guys, you need to sound the alarms. And everyone's like, you silly girl. And so and she's just the only one, you know, she's freaking out. And like, it's a really good storytelling aspect, like just the different parts of weaving in and out of Mount Rainier and the Lahar and how, you know, if a ice-capped volcano erupts, then people will be destroyed by mudslides. And so because I was visiting Mount Rainier 2 weeks ago, which is so weird, I'm reading it and I'm losing my mind and I went with Alina, our education reporter, once again, to call her out. And we're driving around and I'm seeing all these like evacuation signs. And my stupid brain, I'm like, I wonder what that is. And so then today I talked to her and she's like, you dummy, like, like that's if the volcano erupts, you dummy. And I'm like, oh my God, because I was talking to her about the book and it all made sense. Light bulb went on. And you know, I'm from Boise and you hinted at these two scientists going to Boise to study birds. I just feel like this book like just did so many things for my brain. But I'm also, another thing, a huge part of this book is one of your characters in your book is nervous about having children because she's like, my brother is upset with me about having children in this is futuristic, by the way, many years in the future. Her brother's upset because he's like, why are you having kids when your kid probably won't be able to breathe outside because the smoke is so bad? And she's like, well, I can be a good parent. And I feel like this is kind of a part of the reason why I don't want to have children. I just am nervous, right? I'm scared. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way. And so she has to get an air filter in her home to protect her baby. And I just feel like there's a lot of people who feel a similar way. And I'm wondering, I guess, how did you kind of immerse that in the book? Like, how do we go on protecting our kids? And how do we grapple with disappointing our family? Because I feel like I feel like a lot of people can take that lesson from this book. Like, how do we keep going? How do we disappoint our family and keep going? How do we have kids? How do we not have kids? Like, what was your thought process there?
So there are a number of characters in this book who are grappling with climate anxiety, and particularly Ruby, who's struggling with. She's pregnant. She and her husband have decided to have a child, but as you said, it's set in the near future where a lot of people are choosing not to. And I do have friends who don't have kids, and one of the reasons that they do give is not feeling like this is a world that it's okay to bring children into. So I think that this is decision making that people I know are already engaging in, but the story projects it into the future where it's much, much more prominent in this scenario. But it's all born out of my own anxiety. I'm a mother of 2 young children, and I spend a lot of time thinking about, how to keep them safe. In a general sense, you're always thinking about how to keep your kids safe. But in the face of a very rapidly changing climate, what is the world going to look like, and how do I prepare my children to live in that world? So basically, my writing was a reflection of that, and that's in a lot of these stories. But that story in particular, which is called R.I.P. Kittitas Bong Squad, which is, does anybody? All right, Kittitas Bong Squad. Anybody know? Anybody remember driving across I-90 up until they replaced the rail bridge in Kittitas County? For years and years and years, it said Bong Squad on this really high up rail bridge. And I'd always drive past there and go like, A, how'd they get up there? And B, what's Kittitas Bong Squad up to these days? Anyway, I wanted to name a story.
I don't think it's
after
anything good, but
yeah, probably nothing, right? But anyway, in that story, this character is really deeply immersed in this fear of, oh my gosh, how am I going to protect this child? So yeah, it's based on basically my own anxieties, just ratcheted way, way, way up.
Is there, and because I look to other people for advice and not myself, is there a way that you calmed these anxieties throughout the years?
So there's this really wonderful novel called Weather by the writer Jenny Offal that I read, and that was pretty influential to these stories. And in that book, a mother is also struggling with, what to make of climate change. Her son is 8 in the book, and at a certain point, she starts like making plans. And somebody who's much, much more knowledgeable about the situation asks her, "Do you really think you're going to protect him? In 2056, are you going to protect him?" And she has to release it. She's like, "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not going to protect him." And I actually found that incredibly helpful. It's another work of fiction, right? It's not bringing us anything factual, but just this allowance of, you can protect your child while they're small, while they live in your house, but in 2056, are you still protecting them? No. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's actually not that much I can do. So that's the answer.
Well, I mean, my dad still bothers me every day with a text, "What are you doing right now?" So, I mean, there's that.
Fair.
But I'm like, I'm at work, dude. I do this every day. So, speaking of sacrifice, there's a small story in there about an octopus. And this stands out against all the stories because the stories weave together, right? So at the end, you're kind of like, oh, I still don't have a lot of answers, but I have some of them. And the octopus meets this other octopus, so octopi, if you will. I believe that's the correct term. They decide to never have children so they can be together forever because the male octopus, right, I'm getting this right. Yes, okay. The octopus will die after mating with the female octopus. And they're like, "Ugh, but we love each other, and we don't want to be apart." Which I hear it. It makes sense, and I just feel like that kind of, in a weird way, I was like getting emotional. I'm crying about octopi right now. But the story doesn't match any other ones in the book, so I'm wondering what lessons you were trying to convey by including it, because it kind of matched the other stories in a way. Like, they were sacrificing having children because they cared about each other. And I was like, she did such a great job with that one. I see right through it. But I want to know why you decided to include it.
Yeah, it's a good question, because it is a story that's a little out of step with the rest. It is from the point of view of an octopus. It's the one and only. There's a couple of reasons for it. First is my first collection of short stories. It's called I'm Fine, But You Appear to Be Sinking. Some folks kindly purchased it tonight. Has a lot of octopus and squid stories, and I wanted for the new collection to have these slight tethers to my previous work. That would almost be like these little, like, oh, if you found it, you'd be like, I know you. So that was the main reason I wanted one octopus story. But also, it lives next door in the collection to Kittitasabong Squad, where the protagonist is struggling with the decision. She, of course, has made the opposite decision. She's going to have children. This is a story where somebody's not having children, but it's an octopus.
It's a stark contrast, really.
Yeah.
Like, I immediately noticed, I was like, well, octopi, and humans, not the same. But the decision to have children is kind of the same. So I noticed.
And both come from a selfish place. Ruby has a baby because she wants a baby. It's a selfish thing to do. The octopus chooses not to breed, which is what she's supposed to do. You're supposed to breed if you are an octopus, and she chooses not to because, the male octopus dies fairly rapidly after mating, and then the female octopus lives until her eggs hatch, and then she also passes away. And so these octopi are choosing to, for the sake of love, not to mate, so they can be with one another.
I love love. What can I say? Well, okay, so let's talk about Mount Rainier again, because let's go back to that good old boy over there in Western Washington. What did you learn about Mount Rainier? Because I know you talked to a lot of people, and I know some of it is fiction, some of it isn't, but I want to kind of give people, like, obviously this is a work of fictionesque, but there is some
it's that
truth.
fiction science.
I know. I'm like. There's a lot of. But I just want to see. There you go. I want to say, like, really quick. I'll share a text. From my father, really quick. I told you about this, but so I'm reading about Mount Rainier in her book, and she's giving, like, a lot of information about it. She's like, well, it erupted this million years ago, and these cities are built on top of it, and if the lahar happens, it's a mudslide, it'll take out, X, Y, and Z. So I'm reading this book, I'm freaking out. I'm, like, texting my dad. This is a literal text I said, and this man is a retired police officer, so you can imagine what his response was. I said, Mount Rainier's glacier melts too much because of climate change, and then the lake, and then this volcano, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, and then it'll break the Mud Mountain Dam and the lahar, and everyone will be displaced. He goes, okay. And I was like, and I said, that's why melting glaciers are so scary, because if they cause massive mudslides and a cement of concrete that can take out people. And he said, okay, I love you. Headed to bed. Like, this man was like, this girl is on some crazy stuff right now. But, some of it is true. Like, and so I just want you to talk a little bit about, like, that anxiety and that who you talk to about Mount Rainier and what you can tell us. Like, maybe this won't happen in our lifetime, but it could.
Outburst has become my favorite story in the collection because of precisely this conversation, where people read the collection and then they come up to me and they go, is that real? Is that going to happen? Should I be worried? Should I be worried about this? So the phenomenon that Alex is describing in the book is, so Mount Rainier is covered in glaciers, right? There's all of this snow and ice that is up there. And if Mount Rainier erupts, and this has happened in the past before, way, way long ago when the mountain has erupted, all of that comes down the mountain. It's called a lahar. It's basically a massive mudslide. And the largest lahar that's ever happened, Mount Rainier erupted approximately 6,000 years ago, and it resurfaced everything to the west of it. Puget Sound is actually 15 miles farther west than it used to be. That's how much earth came off of the mountain. The mountain doesn't even look the same as it used to. And this will happen again if the mountain erupts. Fortunately, right, we have warnings for volcanic eruption. Like, nobody's going to be surprised if Mount Rainier erupts. And Alex alluded to even the evacuation zones where people who live in the shadow of the mountain are supposed to go if there's the risk of eruption. The story supposes, though, that lahars are possible based on what's called outburst flooding, if just the glaciers themselves release enough water. And so it says in the story that, if Mount Rainier gets hot enough of the glacial ice will melt that it will cause this kind of flooding. And that's not a true thing. What I did was I married two different disasters together to create a whole new climate disaster. So
Thank you so much.
Yes. So you are released of that fear. So when you read Outburst, do know that that will not happen on Mount Rainier in that way. What Andy, the protagonist, is hypothesizing is not a real thing on Mount Rainier. It is a real thing in other places in the world. Glaciers can melt and form glacial lakes. And then the glacial lakes pop open and can cause they can cause lahars. But Mount Rainier is not at a risk of that. So I married these two disasters.
So then what do I have to tell my dad after freaking out?
You have to say, I'm sorry, Dad, Mount Rainier is fine.
I will tell him. I don't think he'll care again. So let's talk about time travelers, because again, you love to be magical. I loved the time traveler chapter. It's titled, I think, A Plan to Save Us. And there's a lot of people in the world right now feeling the weight of, honestly, just everything in general. I'm exhausted. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's just, I don't know. I just feel like everyone's like, man, another bill. I'm tired, and I just keep getting these breaking news updates, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, me too. And so I'm wondering, these time travelers come in, and they're like, we'll save you guys. There's a disease, and there's an outbreak of this bacteria, and we will save you. We have a plan. And I'm kind of like, well, that would be good right now. But who does it take time travelers to come and save us, or what does it take for us to save ourselves? Because at the end, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but things kind of end up working out. But I mean, do we need time travelers to save us, or what does it take?
Man, I don't know the answer to that. That story comes near the end of the collection, and I wrote it before COVID. So if you read it and you have COVID vibes, not my fault. It wasn't COVID times yet. It actually came from my husband, lovingly offered the premise for this. We were talking about some movie that he had been watching that had a time traveler in it, and he was like, I got a story idea for you. I was like, lay it on me, because my husband notoriously has many bad story ideas that he would like for me to write. He was like, what if it's like this town, and people from the future keep coming back, time travelers keep coming back to try to help them, but they don't, nobody's listening. And I was like,
again, nobody's listening, right?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone listen right now. Everyone in this room, start listening.
And I thought it was pretty good, so I wrote the story. But yeah, in that story, the time travelers are coming back to basically solve the problem of an impending plague. And they all have different solutions, and nobody in this town is taking them seriously. Well,
to be fair, they did show up in these weird black pea coats in this small town. I'm like, if anyone showed up in these creepy sunglasses and black pea coats in a small town, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't take them seriously either. They need to be in Carhartts.
It's true. Yeah, they're dressed wrong. They're not doing anything right to be taken seriously. But I don't have the answer for who is going to save us. I hope not time travelers. Let's not rely on time travelers. We should save ourselves.
Is there do you think that it kind of was there a reason, I guess the end of that chapter, it was such a simple solution, really. And it kind of made me think, like, maybe, maybe someone as normal as me can save the world. Probably not. But it kind of had a little bit of hope at the end. And I just want to know, like, did you, right, did you include that for a reason? Like, were you hopeful at the end of that chapter? It seemed like there was a lot of thought going on in there. Like, I just felt like you had a plan.
To save us all.
Well, I hope you do.
Yeah, so I'd originally intended for that story to be the end of the collection, and I like for books to end on a hopeful note. I had a teacher in grad school who said that novels are inherently redemptive, short stories are inherently punitive, and I never liked that. So I wanted whatever story a collection ends on to have a redemptive note. But also, that story in particular is just like, I'm mad at the patriarchy is really the undertone to that. All the time travelers are men, and they just cannot get it right in this story. And then it's ultimately a woman who kind of very simply comes in and solves the problem. And so that was really just from my own like anger about the patriarchy.
It's kind of like that, that feeling when your boyfriend or husband or whatever, they're like, I can't find my wallet, and you look on the counter and you're like, it's literally right here. Like, what are you talking about? It's right in front of my eyes. I can see it. Or where's the ketchup? It's in the fridge right there. So, I mean, I feel like that resonated with me a lot. I think it was so simple, the answer, and I feel like maybe we're just not, maybe the answer's right there the whole time, and we just don't know. Like, I feel like you did a really good job of portraying the feeling of hope and simplicity in, like, a really complicated time. So I do appreciate that.
Thanks.
But, so, Jordan Peele and Issa Rae have optioned the rights to adapt your book into a film. Shout out. Brag about yourself a little. So how does that feel?
So the title story, Sinkhole, which is actually only 6 pages long, was optioned for film by Jordan Peele's production company. That happened in 2020. And so an option, for those who don't know how the Hollywood world works, is basically where a production studio says that they would like the option, quote unquote, to make a movie out of something. And so they pay a certain amount of money to hold on to the rights while they decide if they would like to make a movie. So that is what has happened with Sinkhole. And also, Warner Brothers has optioned another story in this collection, The Sundance Kid Might Have Some Regrets, which is also only 6 pages long. And so both of those studios are just sitting on the rights, and they have paid to sit on them for a certain amount of time. And we will see if they ever end up getting made into a movie. I think that would be very cool, but I don't know if it'll actually happen.
I know Jordan Peele's kind of a little quirky person, so I feel like, if this would be like a great option, honestly, because I would love to see this. Like,
me too.
Everyone needs to read this book. Again, I'm saying it. So I want to I literally marked this page because I take notes. I want to kind of end with this this paragraph. It's at the very end of this book. And a grandma is writing letters to her grandchild, Marigold. We don't know if that's her name, Marigold. This grandma was like, I'm naming my granddaughter Marigold. Fair. So she's writing this letter, and she says, I'd been working for a newspaper, but the paper was in bad shape financially. Print newspapers all across the country were closing, and my colleagues were grieving not only our our bankruptcy, but the death of an industry we had been told was essential to American democracy. Without papers, how could we protect against tyranny, fascism, and free market capitalism? I was concerned about that too. But I was like a rat on a sinking ship, which is to say I jumped free. In Spokane, I freelanced advertising, writing copy. Mostly I stayed at home with your mom and uncles. I was a very anxious parent. The world already seemed so dangerous. I thought if I held my babies close at all times, that I could keep them safe. Honestly, I'd really never let go. So first of all, I just want to thank you for that paragraph, because journalism is so essential to democracy, as we know. And this character really does feel it, but she's also feeling it at a time when she wants to protect her kids. And so to just see that in a book at the very end, I think really resonated with me. And I think honestly, the whole book really did, but I just wanted to give you some thanks for that, because I really do appreciate that you have so much respect for this industry, and everyone here, really. So, I don't know, it was a great book, and I really appreciate you. So, and if we're on time, but if there's anything else you want to say, go for it.
Nah.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you for doing journalism.
Well, thank you
it's
for
true.
writing a book, because I'm obsessed with it.
If there are audience questions, we can open the audience questions to those now. We want to play Stump the Author. I'm wondering about the octopus fact, actually. Is it science fiction, or do octopuses really die after they...
Octopi.
Octopi.
What is it really? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Oh my god, I'm a bad reporter. Okay,
Now we know.
I stand. Okay, well,
You knew.
have some
Yes.
teachers
I wasn't
over
going to say it.
see. Okay. Oh well, great. This is why we ask people, guys. It's octopuses.
Audience question. Is that a true fact?
Yes. So actually, yeah, the most you'll learn in the book is actually from the octopus story. Everything the octopus says about herself is true.
I just was reading a book that, about an octopus, Marcel, different book. Yeah, okay, and so I was wondering,
Is that
wow.
Remarkably Bright Creatures?
Yes.
I haven't read it yet, but it's on my to-read list.
Okay, or you could put the audiobook version in there too. It's good. Just saying. All right, questions? Zipping back here? Yes, Don, one moment.
I love these things so much, and I'm always so impressed listening to the back and forth and authors. It's something I cannot do. But your stories that have been options, would you be interested in doing the screenplay for those?
That's a good question, and it's something that I was asked at the time of the option, and the answer is no, because I don't know how to write a screenplay. I would have to learn, which I think I would like to do at some point in my life, but I'm not in a learning how to write a whole new genre moment right now. Maybe in the future. I did, but I didn't have kids or another job or other books I wanted to write. Yeah, but in the future, it's a future project. Yeah, but right now somebody else very talented, somebody else's very talented from each studio are hopefully writing screenplays for those.
Can you talk about how you balance your writing life and your job life?
Yeah,
That would be
works.
great.
And your mom life? That's 1, 2, 3, all the and then the wife life, but that's, whatever, however that works. All of the
Hashtag
lives
wife
together.
life.
Yeah, wife life.
Oh, badly. Yeah, it's a lot. I used to write at night when my kids were very, very little. I was actually a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, and I would write at night after they went to bed. And even now, just a few years out from that, I'm like, I don't know how I did that, because I'm tired. But I do still work at night a lot to get things done. But I do feel like I'm, sort of trying to carve out space to do creative work. Other things do come first. My kids come first. They're both in school. Now the little guy goes to preschool, and my oldest is in elementary school. So that is helpful. But, there's just never enough time in the day. So the answer is slowly, slowly, slowly is how I do all of the things. And we had a wonderful event at Auntie's last week. Some folks were there who are here tonight. And I did let myself have the moment of saying that, it's been almost exactly 8 years since my first book came out. So I have published 3 books in 8 years. And when I say that out loud, it actually feels like a lot. And I don't let myself have that very often, because I feel like it's always slowly, slowly, slowly. But I have done something somehow.
I know you don't like to talk about what you're working on now, but can you talk about what you're reading now, or if, what book? You said the to be read pile, but what's going to go home, and what are you reading tonight?
Yeah, I will allow that I am writing a novel, and in 7 to 8 years, hopefully, we will all get to read it. Reading, yes, I have a large to-be-read stack. I'm reading a novel that I'm enjoying quite a bit. It just came out, I think, in the beginning of January. Vantage Point by, have you seen this around? Yeah, Sarah Silgar, I believe, is the author's name. Really interesting multi-point of view story about a family where somebody is running for office and another person in the family is kind of being inundated with troublesome internet things, is all I'll say about it. But it's really good. I'm enjoying it quite a bit so far.
Question in the back. And we have a Gonzaga Bulletin reporter here. I expect he will have a question shortly, right? Woo!
Yeah, stand up. Come on. Yeah, let's go.
All right. So as a mom, wife, writer, professor, et cetera, have you had an I made it moment yet? And if you haven't, what do you think it's going to take to have that?
That's a good question. Darn it, Kyle. Yeah, I feel like there have been a few things that have felt big, for sure. The publication of my first book felt big. The sale of the subsequent next 2 books felt big. The film options felt big, but were maybe like, it all happened during COVID, and so it was like kind of tamped down in a weird way. I don't know. I'm somebody who struggles to be in the moment. So I think I feel like I'm always looking to the next thing. Also, books are so slow. Like, by the time a book comes out, it's been done for so long, so it can be hard to feel like, and I've arrived! But I don't know. I don't think I have made it. I'm still going.
You've inspired me enough, I would say you've made it, because I'm obsessed with you, by the way.
That's it.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Okay, I'm the said bulletin reporter in the room, but I guess I've sort of been coerced into a question here.
Yeah.
And mine's a little bit less personal, I think, and more just kind of a question about fiction, because I study fiction. But I'm curious, you talk about, not that all books should end on a helpful or a hopeful note, but that there is a productive kind of reason for that. And I'm curious, like, in relation to writing about things like climate change and natural disasters, are you also a little apprehensive about that? And do you think that it's necessary that we should also maybe be leaving books about that sort of thing with a note of fear and still uncertainty?
That's a good question, for sure. I think both is true. Like, that, yeah, if every story about climate change ends happily, we're doing a disservice. Because, yeah, like, we haven't solved this problem, not by a long shot. But I think that I've read a lot of climate fiction that ends in a really upsetting place. And so I do want to be the person who gets to say, no, we can find something here. Because, again, that's what I want. Like, I want resiliency. I want something here. So I'm going to write it like that.
I have a question for you, and this is what I ask all the people I interview most of the time. So you're subject to my harassment. But if you had a megaphone and you were standing on the top of the city of Spokane with a megaphone and everyone could hear you, what would you tell them?
Oh, no, I would go right back down.
I would. You would not. You tell them. What would you say?
No, I hate that.
You can say anything you want. It doesn't even have to be about your book. It doesn't even have to be. It doesn't even have to be about Mount Rainier. It could be about anything. It could be like, I love, like, LaCroix. I don't know. Like, it could be anything. It literally could be anything. What would you tell people?
I don't even like having to hold a microphone. No, I will answer your question with a not answer.
Again?
Which is, yeah, I'm real good at it. Which is that, part of the joy of writing books is this, like, you imagine your ideal audience, right? And the ideal audience is somebody who takes the book, they buy it from the bookstore, they take it home, they read it alone, and then they speak to no one about it.
And then have an existential crisis.
Yes. It's the exact opposite of the impulse to shout. It's the impulse to be read quietly and alone.
You know what? Maybe I should
Oh,
take
they
some
all
lessons
murmur.
from you. Maybe we should all take some lessons here because, yeah, no, I appreciate it. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that concludes.
Yep, I got a few things to go over.
Okay,
so
great.
If you want to go get set up, if not, or you can still watch because the ending's really great. It's good.
What happens at the end?
So every time, let's thank them. Every time Alex talks, she's our police reporter. I so wish that Ozzy Knezvich was still our sheriff. It would have been awesome.
I don't think anyone
It would have been incredible. So the books are for sale. I want everybody to get some, but we have upcoming events. So one of my favorite events of the year is next week. We host Spokane Black Voices, and if you've not gone, it is magical. I want to show you how magical it is. So it's Monday here.
Joy is not lost, but is kept with perseverance. Not just delights and pleasure, but with grit and triumph. I've been given trials and tribulations. I've been given trauma and distaste. But most importantly, I've been given power to overcome.
I'm sure you've got some folks here in the audience supporting you. If you want to shout them out, show them some love.
Yes, my mother, who is an amazing Black woman and has supported me all the way. My grandmother, the president of the city council.
Right down there.
When you tell stories, that speaks to the right side of the brain. That's the creative part. That's the empathetic part. That's the part of the brain that connects with people. I think the power in storytelling is that we connect with people's hearts. I've learned over the years that nobody changes until their heart changes. You can give them all the information. You can give them all the justifications, but until their heart gets it, till it hits here, doesn't really matter. And so stories go there.
I miss my friend Sandy so much. The Black Lens is, if you haven't got it, it's in the back, and it has all of the work of all the artists who are going to be featured Monday. So I was asked before this event began, there's not any really events listed, and there's a reason why. We don't have all of them kind of nailed down yet, though we have the confirmations. So I'm going to need to tell you some secrets. This can't leave the room. Christy Burns was very specific. I was not supposed to talk about these things. I'm not saying Rick Steves is coming, but in March he could be. Might happen. I'm not saying Jess Walter has a new book coming out, but he does. Not saying Timothy Egan has a new book coming out, but you know what? He does. A couple years ago, we had Stephen Pastis, who does Pearls Before Swine in our newspaper. He's going to come back. It was one of our most highly rated events ever. So he renamed the Spokesman-Review that for one day. So not saying he's coming. And this next one's a pinky promise. You cannot tell anyone. This next one is. So don't tell your neighbors. If you see my boss, you did not hear this. So our little secrets, I need to keep to yourself. So we always end with a raffle, and we get to work in the most handsome building in Spokane, and I love it so much. And I had stickers made of it because it's great. And then I thought those stickers really should be plush. They go with me everywhere. I mean, there's no place that these don't look in. Like, right, David Cook, you are going home with a plush version of our tower. So you'll be able to pick it up at the end on the way out. I love the gargoyles. We didn't get to see them tonight, but they're lovely. They're right outside, and I love to take selfies with them. Also had stickers made and plush.
Rob is crazy. This is why.
Katie Wiseman, you are going to take home the gargoyle. So since our very first Northwest Passages, we have given away this print. It is we found an old piece that ran in the paper in the early 1900s, and we digitized it. And you can't buy it; you have to win it at Northwest Passages. And Mary Wissink, you have won that. So our designer one night had a little bit to drink and said that would look great as a Warhol. And this is the one everyone loves, right? So Charles Doherty, you got that. I have one more small thing for all of us. We're already here. So if anyone would like the quick tour of the building, I will lead you around. I have the good key. But Chrissy Burns says we have to be done by 9 because the snow's coming. But y'all have to buy Leyna's book before we can go. So go do that now. Thank you all for coming. I love when you all come to the newspaper and hang out with us. It's so fun.
Support local journalism. Woo!